painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking, KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Art Beat. Art Beat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Art Beat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Today on Art Beat, we talked to Lyn Goldfarb on her film Eddy's World that was shown at this year's Frozen River Film Festival. We talked about her reason for making the film, what it was like growing up with a father who invents toys, and how long it took to produce. This is KJ with Lyn Goldfarb on Art Beat. So I am in the studio today with Lyn Goldfarb, who's the director of Eddy's World. How are you doing today, Lyn?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's actually in LA, a nice sunny day, so that's nice.
Yeah, here in Minnesota, it's surprisingly nice today, so I'm happy.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I didn't even have to really wear a jacket to walk here.
Wow, that is nice and warm.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are the director of Eddy's World, which was featured in the Frozen River Film Festival. Can you tell us what gave you the idea to make this documentary?
Well, for many years as a documentary filmmaker, I had been telling the stories of interesting people whose lives have, made an impact on our lives or our understanding of the world. And I hadn't really, looked inward at my own family, and I was kind of in a little bit of a break from the last film I had made and not wanting to fundraise anymore for a while, and thought that, while I'm waiting, while I'm not sure what I'm doing next, I should interview my father, who at that point was 97, and I started as a family legacy project. But when my father started talking on camera, I realized it was a film. So that kind of changed the whole dynamic, although I did spend the first 4 days of filming that we did, which was spread out over a number of months just because of schedules. We just focused in on continuing to do, interview him about his life, before we went and started, filming any of the B-roll or him working or anything like that.
It was really interesting. So, it's about your father, which I always love. I love wanting to see like what people in your family do and tell their stories, which I think it's great. But what exactly did your father do that was so interesting that you wanted to tell this story?
Well, for two reasons. I mean, my father's an independent toy inventor, and as he says, he's probably the first independent toy inventor, meaning that he didn't work for a company but sold his items to toy companies who then manufactured the toys. And he was well known for a number of toys, including the Yakety Yak teeth, which everybody knows, and Stompers and Kerplunk, and a lot of toys that kind of crossed different generations of people as they were growing up as children. And so he was always famous for that. I mean, not famous, but everybody knew a number of his toys. And he was always a pretty modest man, so he wasn't like, not a lot of publicity. There were a few articles written about him. But actually what got me interested in telling the story was not the toys, but was his grace in aging. And my mother had died in 2013, and she died of Parkinson's, and it was a very difficult end of her life and death. And my father was taking care of her, even though they lived in the same retirement community he lives in now. And I looked at him, and he looked so worn out, and that he was aging so quickly. I felt, just from the stress of being the spouse of someone who was, very ill. And then when my mother died, my father started walking. And he walked 1 or 2 miles a day, and he walked himself back to health. And I was kind of really amazed at this transformation of him. That was, his way of coping with grief, and had a lot to do with his ideas of optimism and creativity. He got, once he started walking, he started getting ideas again. He started feeling creative. He started working, again. And so I was actually very interested in that process. And I knew that the lens to tell that was toys, and then, of course, his life, which, and how he, got to be who he is, and how those attributes and characteristics helped sustain him as he grew older.
Wow, that's really interesting. I like that. It's always hard when you lose a partner. My grandpa lost my grandmother a few years ago, so he was upset at first, obviously, but he just got back into the fold, started helping people, and he got better. Yeah, he
just turned his life, around. Well, he got it back on track, and at his age, for a lot of people it would have been really hard, but he was able to do that, and now, he has a new life. He also met Greta, his girlfriend, and they have a relationship. But in his late 90s, he started a new life, which is also pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then certainly as I started talking about the film and interviewing him and making the film, I saw the amazing fan base that he had and the people interested in the toys, and, how something that I had grown up with, and I knew, really how much those toys resonated throughout generations.
Yeah, speaking of growing up, what was it like growing up with a toy inventor as your father?
Well, to some extent, it was similar to, having, a father that went off to work every day. My father had a shop outside of the home. I mean, he worked in his garage for a number of years, but that's when we were really young. And then when he started being successful, he, had a shop where he hired people, and but he would bring toys home all the time for us to try out. So we were playing with prototypes, we were testing things, and so that was really nice. But the interesting thing was that my father, because he was bringing home toys that were in production, or, that hadn't been released yet, we were all sworn to secrecy, my sister and brother and I. So even though people knew that I had a toy inventor father, nobody knew that. We were never allowed to talk about any of the toys.
That's funny.
So, yeah. But the other thing that it meant was I grew up in a very creative household. I grew up in a household where both my parents valued innovation, creativity, independence, and we also my father always creatively did things. So we had some of the best Halloween costumes, because it would get all his creative juices going and things like that. So but it was a very supportive, comfortable, happy family.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad. So you've mentioned that you've been a director for quite a number of years now. I was on your website and your biography, and I saw that you did like big projects for PBS, Lifetime, TNT. What was that all like?
Well, I've always been an independent producer. So that, in a way, like my father has been an independent inventor. But the difference for me was that I both came up with my own films, but I also worked for a lot of different productions. So the very first documentary I made, which I was the producer and historian for, was called With Babies and Banners, and that was a great untold story about women in the labor movement in the 1930s. And that was nominated for an Academy Award. So it was an incredible first film. But it took 5 years, and I wasn't sure whether I was ready to do that again. So I left film for a while. I didn't start out as a filmmaker. I actually started out, being interested in women's history. And then when I came back to being a filmmaker, I worked for a number of years on series that were the PBS series where I got hired to direct, produce, and write for them. And then after a number of years, started developing my own series again. And what was nice about working for other people, of course, is you didn't have to raise the money. And it was always, and working for other people, particularly in series, was interesting because, it was a whole collaborative experience with working together with other filmmakers. But at a certain point, you realize that you don't really get the real credit for your work. So I, decided, and in collaboration with a couple of other filmmakers, we then started saying, okay, we can do this. Why don't we just develop our own series? And that was a matter of coming up with an idea. So the first series that I developed on my own after, working for series for, quite a few years was a series on the Roman Empire. And I did in collaboration with a filmmaker, Margaret Koval, who I had met when we were both working on a series called The Great War. And we kind of decided, well, why don't we just do something of our own? And she found a book about the first century in the Roman Empire. We thought, this could be interesting to do, and we'll do it kind of in an original way, which at that time was using surviving writings from the period and using actors, to recite, original work, and it was work from like 2,000 years ago, so it was quite interesting. And we kept pitching the film series. So we kept we kept hitting this, roadblock, which was like, it was really hard at that point for two women, to be taken as seriously, in terms of pitching a story like this. So I remember it was really hard to get the, attention, to really look at this series. And so basically what happened is that we kept pitching it to this one company that seemed to be interested, and they would say, come back with another version, and we would come back with the other version, and then finally, they had to go ahead on on the series, and we were given the money to produce it. So it was a longer struggle than I thought it would be, but it was actually very, very rewarding to be part of that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I would understand struggle trying to get your stuff out there, have people help you with it, but I'm glad you finally got it through.
Yeah, well, I remember one of the things at that time, and it was a number of years, about 30 years ago, it was like they said, well, we didn't know there were any good women documentary filmmakers in Los Angeles, and it was like, what? But people sometimes have a very, a narrower view because so much at that time, and it's not the case anymore, but at that time so much of the work was centered in New York.
Yeah.
Or Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's true. When you said that, my jaw dropped. I'm like, oh no, you can't do that. Okay. So wow. You mentioned that you were nominated for an Academy Award, and I saw that you had like a bunch of other awards that you had also won as well. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, we did. And I won them as being part of, of series. So, I don't even know. So, we got this series that I, worked on the Great Depression and the Great War, where the war, was World War One. So we received for the Great War like a Peabody Award and an Emmy. For the Great Depression, we received, a DuPont Award, and I think we might have received an Emmy on that. I'm not totally sure. But it is interesting, part of it, and both film series got a lot of, attention, and they were really considered, innovative and breaking some boundaries in what PBS had done before. But in those cases, really the people that get the credit, and get the recognition are mostly, the executive producers, they're the people that really created it, or in the case of the Great War, the station. So that's kind of what, made me feel like, okay, I really want to try to do it on my own again. And to see, okay, what's possible. So, but it was, it is wonderful to receive those kind of, those kind of awards. So I feel like luckily, very preciously, my films have received like the top awards in television.
Oh, and I congratulate you on that. I would feel very proud of myself if my films were up there as well. So
yeah, no, it's great.
So yeah. So you've shown some of your other films, and I believe Eddy's World as well, to other film festivals like the Los Angeles, Telluride. What was it like having it be shown here at the Frozen River Film Festival here in Winona, Minnesota?
Well, I think it's really, it's such a different experience from being in a film festival in person and virtual, so I think they're hard comparisons. But what I really liked about being, at Frozen River and being, at several other virtual film festivals this year is that so many more people get to see the film than would, come necessarily to an in-person festival. I mean, something like Telluride or Los Angeles is it attracts a large number of people. I mean, they attract a large number of people, but with virtual film festivals, you're attracting a lot more opportunities for people to see films. They don't have to travel to where the film festival is. And that's actually very rewarding. I mean, I think that I've probably over this last year, or it hasn't even been a year, the first film festival we were in was last May. I feel like I've been able to reach people, in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world, and that's been great, and I really love that. And at Frozen River, I was able to participate in a couple of the Zoom gatherings that they had. And that was really nice to be able to meet people because, the one thing about being in a virtual film festival, you're a little bit alone unless the festival has, opportunities for filmmakers to meet and to also meet, some of the people that are both fans and instrumental to making the film festival happen. So I thought that Frozen River was really good in providing those opportunities.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed the virtual this year. I have gone in person before, obviously, because I'm here. It's right here for me, and as a student, I can go for free. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a different experience, but those connections, no matter how you get them, are really important.
Yeah, they can be. So how long did it take to produce and edit Eddy's World?
Well, it took probably to produce and edit it probably a couple of years, but that's really because we were doing it kind of on and off. We didn't really we did, especially in the beginning, we did it with no money, and my editor, Shauna Carroll, who's a great editor, she just had a baby, and so I was able to pay her much less than her rates, and she could work while the baby was napping, and so everything kind of we stretched things out. We weren't really in a hurry in the beginning. And, I'd work another job and then get back to it. And so it's kind of hard to say how much time it actually took. But we edited over probably or a year and a half to maybe 2 years from the very beginning, but probably more over a year. But it's, but not, consistently all the time. Once we did receive some money at one point, and then we worked on it pretty steadily, because then we were really able to get to the point to finish it. So, and then we kind of worked around my father's schedule, so that, even at his age, I'd call him and I'd say, can we come over and film? And he'd go, I'm busy. I'm like, okay. So it was like trying to really corral my father into being available and not on a deadline. So it was, that was interesting as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And then when we actually, the interesting thing is I felt we were almost done with the film about maybe about 6 months before we finished. And then my father got a 3D printer. And then I realized, oh, my God, we're not done. This is a whole other part of the story. And once we started filming him with the 3D printer, it just kind of opened up other, not even other opportunities, but, at a certain point, if you're making a film about somebody, even if it's a parent, or a family member, they kind of get used to what you're doing at a certain point. It doesn't matter how many films they've seen of yours. Nobody really knows what's going on in the filming. And sometime after he got the 3D printer, he was like, oh, do you, because I've been asking him about going to, his movie group or someplace where I could film him, in that kind of a setting. And he was a little hesitant, and then he, said, oh, yeah, why don't you come to the movie group? I'll talk to them. And then the writing group. So then he got more involved in that as well. So actually having it take longer was helpful, because I think we had more opportunities to film than we would have had a different kind of settings if we had finished it earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also think that, ironically, during releasing the film during the pandemic, because we released it in May, helped us, with audiences, because I do feel that people, it's important now to see a film about optimism, a film about, innovation, about, aging well, toys. All the things that make you feel good about Eddy's World. I think that the audience was kind of ready this year, was more receptive, and I think that that really helped us, as well.
Yeah, and I always feel that with a film like this, audience is really important, because if they don't connect with it, then they're not interested. But
right.
It was really good. I really did like the film.
Thank you.
So actually, because of how kind of it's still developing, you said he recently had gotten the 3D printer. Do you possibly plan on continuing the story and maybe even expanding on it more?
Probably not, although I don't really know. I haven't seen my father for a year, because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I will see him soon again. I do want to continue interviewing him, because I felt actually I never finished, because I kind of switched from a family legacy project to a film. But I'm working with him more importantly now on, he wants to write a book of the 100-word stories that he writes. So he wants to publish a book of 100-word stories. So I'm working with him on that now. And so that's kind of my priority. And I'm not sure where another chapter of the film or another kind of version of the film would go at this time, but who knows?
Yeah, that's always the thing. Who knows what could happen?
Yeah.
No, but the story thing sounds really interesting.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's. I'm really happy to do that. It's something he's wanted to do for a really long time, and we kind of said this year, okay, let's do it. So.
Perfect. So you mentioned that you worked with these big companies and helped produce stuff, but now you have your own production company. What's that like?
Well, it's what's it like? It's always on you to figure out your next project. So it's interesting. I like it. I've always been an independent filmmaker, so in one way or another. But it's challenging, because you have to either raise money or get a company behind it to pay for it. And thinking of always new ideas, creative ideas. So it's very rewarding, and it's and it's not easy.
Yeah, but you can look back on it and say, this is mine, I did it.
Absolutely, yes.
That's always the most important.
And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that I have a body of work that's mine. So it's really nice.
Yeah. So what is there anything you want people who watch Eddy's World to take away from the film?
Well, I think probably the biggest message is the power of optimism. That we that it's more important to look forward to the future, to look on the bright side, to, as my father always said, when you're an inventor, you learn to love failure. As a filmmaker, you learn to love failure, rejection, more rejection than failure. But the way to survive all that is just to be optimistic and forward-looking. And I think it's really, that we all have within us the power of creativity and innovation, and, we should embrace in whatever form that takes. And I think that's the lesson of my father is, live your life well, live your life kind of with optimism, with a spirit of, continued discovery, and be creative in whatever you do.
Wow. That is definitely some words of wisdom to live by.
Yeah. So, I don't know whether you've seen, but, Eddy's World is on YouTube. And we were licensed I licensed Eddy's World to the New Yorker. And they have a YouTube channel. But if you look up Eddy's World on YouTube, all you just put is the name, you'll see we have I think right now 721,000 views.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. But we also have about 2,000 or close to 2,000 comments. And I often just, go to that page and read the comments because these are all comments from people that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That have seen the film, they love the film, they share it. And it's really uplifting because you really can see from these few comments that people feel compelled to write of what the film meant to them. And, I think it would be nice if you have a chance to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Because I think, that even better than me talking about what the film means is kind of what the film is meaning to people, that are seeing it like you for the first time, but I get to talk to you.
Yeah. That's funny that you mentioned it being on YouTube, because I was going to ask how people can find out more about the film, where they can see it, and even about you if they ever want to talk to you about something. Okay.
So a couple of things. One, that it's on YouTube, so you just put Eddy's World. And you can also go to our website, which is eddysworld.net, Eddy's World, one word. And there there's the link to YouTube, there's the link to the New Yorker. There's other, links. There's a biography of my father. There's more about his toys, so you can get to know him a little bit. And then you can reach me at Lyn. You can reach me through the website or at lyn@eddysworld.net.
All right. Well,
LYN, LYN at eddysworld.net.
All right.
And you can reach him, although I definitely screen, emails to him because otherwise he gets inundated.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Lyn, so much for talking with me today in the studio. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. It's been really nice talking to you.
Thank you, Lyn. It was a lot of fun. And once more, I really enjoyed the film. I can't express that enough. I I remember the yakety yak teeth. I never played with them.
Yeah.
Because that was a different time, but I remember them fondly.
Well, it's so interesting. And that was, my father's first toy that he sold. And that was in 1949. And that toy has endured throughout all these years, and people of every age that I know have played with it or seen it or know it, from their own childhood. So it's been really interesting.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of went viral before things went viral.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Lyn, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks again to Lyn Goldfarb for the interview. To learn more about her film, go to eddysworld.net, EDDYS world.net. To stream today's episode or any other episode of Artbeat, go to KQAL.org and click the podcast tab. This is KJ on Artbeat.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at KQAL.org.